Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Twins Talk Arsenal. Today we are talking about the big man behind me here. You can just see Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And we're just talking about some news reports which have been circulating recently about Arsenal considering selling him in the transfer window. This is a massive 360 from where we were a few months ago at the beginning of the season, where everyone was begging Aubameyang to stay. He just won us the FA Cup. And now there are some sources apparently within Arsenal which say that we're considering selling him to raise funds this summer. Stash, do you think there's any truth behind these rumours? Do you think we are going to consider selling our captain?
I think it's a tough one. When you think about how he's performed overall since he's come from Borussia Dortmund, he has been the main man for Arsenal, been scoring, the goals which Arsenal have ultimately needed to get into Europe, to win the FA Cup last season. Scored very vital goals. It's not quite worked out for him this season, but he is still our main man. When you kind of consider he's always Arsenal's top goal scorer season after season. He does miss chances, but what player doesn't? At the end of the day, he is Arsenal's most clinical forward and attacker, and it would be a real shame if there were truth in the rumours. He is at an age where he is, moving on in life. He's not as quick as he used to be, etc. But this is still a player which can deliver on a consistent basis for Arsenal and get them the goals that they need. What I would also add is, we're not in the position of, other teams like, Chelsea as an example, where they've got a lot of attacking talent in their team, and you lose one player, you can just replace him with another, or you've got a lot of money to go out and buy a ready-made replacement. When you look at Arsenal, if we lose Aubameyang, he's obviously a key member of our forward line, and if we were to lose him, we have young, promising players which could come in, but we don't necessarily have a ready-made replacement at this moment in time to come in and replace Auba.
Yeah, I think the kind of reports coming out were that we're regarding Aubameyang as a sellable asset right now, which, we could have sold him a few months ago, but it would have been for less money due to his contract length. And also, apparently, some coaches at Arsenal have come to the conclusion that he's peaked and he's on a bit of a downward spiral. So we might be stuck in a bit of a Mesut Ozil situation. Personally, I kind of see it both ways, right? He's been our highest goal scorer for the last 3 years, I think, 3 consecutive years. He still is again this year. But also, I think us and other Arsenal fans this year have seen his struggles. And we've started to see that aside from goal scoring, which is obviously the hardest thing to do in football, does he add that much else to the team? Lacazette links up play, you would say, a lot better than Aubameyang does. So I kind of see why we should keep Aubameyang. He's our talisman, he's our captain. He won a CFA Cup on his own last year. But also, if we're going to get the most amount of money from him, which, during COVID times is pretty important for Arsenal, considering most of our income is made through match day income, and we've lost that completely. Maybe this would be a good time to sell him. And try and maximize the kind of profit that we can get out of an aging player, really. I'm kind of torn on the issue. I wouldn't mind seeing him stay because his goals are going to be important. If you lose him, you're going to need to replace those goals. But equally, do we cash in now? I think this is a bit of a hard situation for us to decide.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I would say is it depends on the amount of money that we're talking about. If we're going to sell him as an example for 20 million, it might be worth it to just keep him if he can get us into Europe, into the Champions League, next season, the season after, as an example. Then obviously you're not making a net profit by selling him. But, if we were to sell him for more, closer to, 30, 40 million, potentially, then, it would be something which you'd be more open to the idea of. Obviously every player has their price. It's a tough one. I think it does depend what is seen in training. If it is the case that he's maybe lost a bit of motivation now that he's got this new contract, if he's become a bit complacent, etc., then I would agree that ultimately the best decision would be to sell him for the right price. But if we're basing it on just him having a tough year, a lot of players have one tough year in their career, and a lot of them have many more than one tough year. So if it's one that this is a tough year for Auba, but from next season he'll start firing again, then obviously in that scenario you wouldn't really want to sell him, even if a fairly high offer came in, because if he can kind of rediscover the form of the first 2.5 seasons that he had at Arsenal, then this is a player that you want to keep and you do ultimately want to build the team around. So I think it depends what's seen in training. It depends on the price that we can get for him. We do have some promising players coming through, which in theory could take his place. But really, to be successful, competing for trophies, etc., you need that balance of experienced players and youthful players. And it is a very fine line. You don't want a team of just promising players. You do need that experience who can they've got that know-how about them and can get you that goal as and when needed.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing in training and the disciplinary kind of issues that we've seen with Auba kind of add weight to these rumors. Normally, you would just ignore these rumors straight away, right? But we know that Arteta dropped him against Tottenham for disciplinary issues. We know that that was a accumulation of issues, not just one incident. We know that he had the issue with the tattoo artist, which was pictured at his house, which was put on Instagram, which is obviously a breach of COVID. So, and we also know that Arteta is not going to be a manager who's going to put up with somebody challenging his authority, whoever they are. So maybe this is something which the club is considering here. Is Aubameyang worth it for the wage that he's on, the age that he is? And if he's also showing a bit of dissent as well, is it worth keeping a player like that? One thing which Paul Merson, I think, discussed was if we were to sell Aubameyang, would Arsenal get Aguero at the end of the season? Personally, I think that would be a bad move by Arsenal. I know Aguero's got amazing pedigree. He's better in the Premier League. I think he's actually beaten Thierry Henry's Premier League record now. And I think his goal or assist ratio to minutes is just below Thierry Henry's as well. So we're talking about one of the best strikers the Premier League has ever seen. But I think if we were to replace Aubameyang with Aguero, you'd probably be giving him a bigger contract or an equivalent contract to what Auba's already on. You're giving it again to an aging player, and you're giving it to a player who is massively injury prone and has been injury prone for large parts of the last few seasons. So you'd basically be paying a old injury prone player to sit on the bench just for his previous accomplishments. How do you kind of feel about that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, when you look at Aguero, what he's done in the past, of course, can't be, touched, so to speak. He's the Premier League's top goal scorer. His contribution to Man City has just been immense over the years that he's been there. So, of course, you can't talk badly about that. But yeah, what I would say, he's on at least 200, 250 a week at Manchester City. He's coming on a free, so he'd want big money. I would be concerned that this would be another Willian scenario where, he's coming to a new Premier League club. As good as he is, he'd need time to settle. And this is an older player, so he doesn't necessarily have the time to settle. He's not got age on his side. He had a bad injury record this season. I think if we were to replace Aubameyang, it might be better to replace him internally, whether that be, Auba playing on the left-hand flank, and then we replace him with, Pepe, who can play there, Martinelli, who can play there, Emil Smith-Rowe has played there this season. So whether it will be replacing internally, it might be a better shout than Arsenal going out and spending big money to get a replacement who might not hit the ground running. Yeah, I think, Aguero, phenomenal player, scored many goals against many teams, but at this stage in his career, for me personally, my opinion is that we would be downgrading actually on Aubameyang if we were to go for Aguero based on their performances this season.
I think it's an interesting one, right? Because obviously, if you sell Auba, I think if you can replace him internally, that's amazing, and you can use his funds elsewhere, such as to pay for a Martin Odegaard transfer, right? If we raise enough funds. If we were to replace him internally, though, you're looking at losing Auba, and you're also probably looking at losing Lacko because he's only got 1 year left on his contract. So you've got a huge hole to fill in the centre and possibly out on the left as well if Pepe doesn't step up and start being more consistent. Now, I know that some Arsenal fans have been debating whether Martinelli is being trained to take over that central attacking position. Um, would you be able to replace a goal scorer like Aubameyang and the goals that he brings, guaranteed pretty much every single season, with an untested, untried teenage forward who hasn't had many games for Arsenal? And I know Martinelli is got a big future ahead of him. He's a hugely talented player, but he would be playing in a position which is a bit of an unknown. Are Arsenal in the kind of financial situation where we need to be trying unknowns because we need the money, or should we use the funds from a possible Auba transfer to go out and sign a already established star?
Yeah, definitely. What I would say is, as an example, so Lacazette and Eddie Nketiah have, at the end of this season, they're going to have a year left on their contracts. Balogun is, his contract's going to expire at the end of the season. So, it might be the case that by Aubameyang leaving, it actually opens the door to these players as well. It may encourage Lacazette to sign an extension, knowing that he will be the main focal point of our attack. When you look at Eddie Nketiah and Balogun, these players, obviously young players, but they may view it as now they have the option or the chance to be, starting the majority of the Carling Cup games, maybe some of the Europa League games. So for their career development, maybe a door's opened by Auba leaving. In terms of players like Martinelli and unproven players, it's a tough one. When Aubameyang leaves, if he leaves, it's very hard to sign one replacement who will, score those goals. What you really need is for the team as a whole to step up. So as an example, if, Martinelli plays on the left, as an example, obviously, ideally, you want him to be banging in the goals, 15, 20 goals a season would be phenomenal. But what you really need, realistically, is you need Martinelli to step up, get 10 goals in a season. You'd need Odegaard, as an example, if we sign him permanently, to step up, get 10, 15 goals in a season. You need Pepe and Saka to step up, start getting goals, more so than what they've done this season. That's the only way that you'd be able to kind of offset the loss of Aubameyang and his goals. I think it would be very hard to get one player who could replace him, without going out and spending 150, 200 million on these phenomenal world-class players when you're thinking of Mbappe, etc. Without going out and splashing that type of money, it would be very hard to get a like-for-like replacement who can get those goals that Auba provided. So in my opinion, you'd need the team as a whole to step up, which might not be a bad thing. It puts that pressure on their shoulders for them to deliver, and it could bring out the best of them.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, right, in my honest opinion, if we get a big enough offer for Auba, say 50 million plus for a player of his age, I personally think we take it, right? And that's because I go back to thinking about a quote which Arsene Wenger came out with. I'm not going to get it exactly, but the bones of it was basically that a player is like an ice block, right? And you're trying to sell that ice block for the most amount of money, because the older they get, the more that ice block melts, the harder it is to sell them for any value, and the more their form drops, right? So if we can sell Auba at this age for a decent amount of money, I think we take it, considering the recruitment job that we have, right? We've got to buy a replacement for Lacazette up front. We've probably got to buy a replacement for Xhaka if we want to upgrade our midfield. We're going to lose, say, like David Luiz, and it looks like Hector Bellerin in defense. So we're going to have to buy replacements for them. And also we need a backup replacement for Bernd Leno in goal, because, even if we sort of re-sign Matt Fraser at the end of the year, we're going to need money for that. So you're looking at the spine of Arsenal, really, that needs reinforcing, and where those funds are going to come from, especially as we've just lost 40 million and are going to lose more. And we know that Stan Kroenke is not going to put his hand in his pocket. So personally, I think if we get the right offer for Auba, I think we sell him and reinvest the funds, considering the performances that he's put in this year. Hello?
Yeah, definitely. I think 100% in decent money, then I think it's definitely worth it. Yeah, I think it depends on the offer, but if we get good money, I think it would be worthwhile to sell him. Like you mentioned, he's obviously a bit of an older player. He's coming to the end of his career. So it would, you look at Arsenal's recent transfer history as well. We've had to get rid of players on frees. We've not got good money when reselling these players. So if we could get a sell on value for selling Auba, it would be something to consider if it was good money. Like you mentioned, we've got areas of the squad where we need to invest in and develop. So, the money would be, well, hopefully, would be well spent and is needed. Yeah, I think also when you look at Arsenal as a squad, there are only a handful of players that you maybe look at and think they're, assets which we can sell and use the money to reinvest. Maybe as an example, you'd look at Joe Willock and Maitland-Niles. It depends if they can kick on their loan seasons, but if not, they may be sellable assets. But apart from them, Arsenal don't really have too many. So it might need to be the case that we sell someone like Aubameyang, one step backwards to take two steps forwards kind of thing. We sell him, invest in the squad. We, in terms of individual players, we're maybe slightly worse by selling Aubameyang. But as a team, if we're stronger, it can more than compensate. And no one player is individually bigger than the club. So if we could get good money for him and invest it elsewhere, it probably would be a good bit of business.
Yeah, I agree. I think Arteta and Edu have a massive job on their hands in the summer. Hopefully, we're going to see some big movement coming from Arsenal. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you liked what you saw, please feel free to like, comment, and if you're new around here, please do subscribe. We'll be back again with new videos, probably after the Liverpool game, and then for any other Arsenal transfer news as well. So until then, we'll catch you guys soon, and up the Gunners.